it. Thank you. All right. Well, way too many windows open and not enough screen. That's okay. So it's 5:30 on February 16th, 5/31, 2022. And I'd like to call the meeting for the Board of Water Commissioners, Katuitt Fire District, to order. Commissioners Horsley and Hoppenstedt are in attendance. Expect Commissioner Robinson momentarily, shortly. Also have our office manager, Jim Nash. Oh, my dog just is dropping stuff, sorry. And Superintendent Chris Wiseman in attendance. So thank you for joining us. And it looks like we have Jennifer Loughran on board as well. So thanks for joining us, Jennifer. I think that's all I need to do right at the start. First off, we'd like to see if there's any public comment. No public comment. At this point, we'll take comments as we go throughout the meeting as well. Our next order of business is review and approval of prior meeting minutes. And we're including our regular meeting from January 12th, 2022, as well as our October 20th, 2021 and November 17th, 2021 executive session meeting minutes. And it's my understanding that we do not have to go into executive session to approve those minutes. And I'd like to go ahead and have those approved, and I can drop by the office and sign them, and we can post them as appropriate.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to make a move that we approve them, but I don't know if you want to wait just to see if Mark has any comments. We could maybe come back to this. It's up to you. Either way.
Do you want to wait for him for the January 12th, 2022 minutes and make a motion on the October 20th, 2021?
Sure, I can do that. That's a good idea. Why don't I do that? I'll move we approve the October 20th and November 17th executive session minutes.
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. How are you there, Superintendent Wiseman?
Not too bad. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well.
Good, good.
A nice day out there. Nice to see you this morning.
Oh, yes, beautiful. Lost a little bit of snow today. We're going to lose some more tomorrow here.
That's good. It's going into the ground slowly.
That's right. Where we want it. Nice and slow.
Nice and slow. That's good. Do you want to start your water quality report or your superintendent's report prior to Mark?
Yeah, I can go in. We went, our monthly bacteria samples all came back clean. We did get some results on the sodium. They're slightly, they probably average around the same that they did last month. We're not seeing a difference. You should have a copy of that came in the packet.
Yeah.
Hold on, it should be coming up pretty soon. Yeah, we didn't average that out. I should have averaged it out. I'm sorry before putting it up there, but some of those stuff we get through the state, and some of them we have to call the lab and get the results because some of them have assigned numbers that go directly to the state every time we test. So we're right around the same levels that we were. It seemed a little like we were getting a little high again. It's kind of confusing. Maybe it is because of the salt on the roads right now. They're doing a lot more salting. We might get a little bit more, but we do know they're pre-treating a lot right now. Every time they talk about snow, it seems like they're pre-treating the roads.
Yeah.
Yeah, my only comment is I know that from Tom Cambereri's modeling, I think we've got a 3 or 4 year flow time between like Route 28 to get to the wells. And so there's definitely, it's hard to correlate this with a recent snowstorm. And that's probably one of the reasons why it's all kind of averaged out, because all that stuff takes a while to get there. Plus the other roads closer to Route 28 in that development area we've been talking about. Those were probably salted as well. So I think what we're seeing here is kind of an average effect of everything.
Correct. Yeah, it'd be interesting to go back and actually, after we get a little more knowledge here, go back and see what the snowfall was. Like last year, we didn't get much snowfall at all, whereas we're getting more this year and everything. It'd be nice to kind of put that into a little bit more of comparison.
So look at road treatment compared to sodium. And maybe on a 3 or 4 year setback window, right?
Yeah. I mean, it does look, looking at all this data, it's, first of all, I think it's great. Thanks for keeping this whole thing together, Jen and Chris, because I think it's helpful for us to look long-term here. And it certainly is showing a uptick here over the last 10 years or more, but certainly seems to be stabilizing recently at this higher level. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure why it would have, looks like it almost has close to doubled in some instances 10, 12 years ago. I'm not sure why that would be.
Yeah.
But well, it does seem like the only true source would be accountable source that we could address would be the treatment of the roads. But that's part of our plan, I think, right?
Right.
Well, the one
Some
thing
of it could be coming from septic systems also we talked about and everything.
it could. I was just going to say the one thing the students did point out in their report is per station 5, which looks like it's one of the higher ones. Isn't that the one that's close to that development that one of the students identified? It was part of the special permit for Mashpee.
Correct. Yes. Yeah, they have their own treatment plan in there that's actually injected outside of our zone 2.
Right.
Now,
but I'm even thinking of the road salting, Chris. That's the highest one. And maybe if you wanted to think about one action, I think the recommendation there was to approach that development just to kind of knock on their door and remind them or ask them what they're doing, because they're supposed to not be using. I think the permit said they were supposed to somehow restrict the amount of salt, and it might be good just to remind them of that. I don't know who would do this, whether it be you, Chris, or somebody else, but and I'm not sure it's a high priority, but that would be the one thing that I'm remembering from that report that was a recommendation to consider. And that is the one, that's the only one. Well, that is, well, I was going to say the highest one, but not really. Some of the other ones are high too. Number 1, number 2.
Yeah, it's interesting that 4 isn't as high.
It is.
As
Interesting.
Given its proximity to the Little River, but
Yeah,
it's good that it's not. So perhaps we should I'll send a letter to their board of directors.
that's a good idea. Just as a reminder.
Association from the commissioners.
Yeah.
And open some dialogue there. So I'm going to put a note here to find out who their contacts are over there and maybe draft a letter that I could circulate to Commissioner Robinson and yourself.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that, Tom.
Okay. And I'd like to welcome Commissioner Robinson at this point. He's been here.
Thanks. Sorry, I was a little bit late. Just getting home from work.
It's great. Thanks for joining us.
Before I go into my report, did you want to go back to those minutes?
Yes, let's do that. So Commissioner Robinson, Commissioner Horsley and I approved the executive session minutes from October and was it September, Jen?
October and November of 21.
October and November, thank you. But we still have our January minutes to take a look at. Have you had a time to look at those?
They'll look good to me. Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. So Good with the minutes, and then we'll go into your report, Chris.
All right. This is the superintendent's report for January of 2022, right on February 16th, 2022. So in January of 2021, we pumped 8,096,000 gallons of water. And in January of 2022, we pumped 7,694,000 gallons of water, for about 402,000 less than the previous year, which, you know, it seems right now that we seem to be at a low point where we're getting up, down, back and forth. It seems to be going back and forth between previous and 2 years ago. So it seems to be the norm now. Using a little less, where last year everybody seemed to be using a little more. Maybe those rate hikes are actually helping out there a little bit.
Yeah, this
we
looks
did-
good.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry. I just have one question, Chris, for Jen. I just as a reminder, I am colorblind, and as going forward, the two colors that you selected for 2019 and 2022, I have a hard time distinguishing. And I don't know if they go left to right in terms of chronology, meaning is 22 on, I guess it is 22 on,
Correct.
oh no, 22 is on the far left of January. Is that
Right.
right?
This is 22
Okay.
and this is 2019.
So I
I'll see
guess
if I can
going
switch those
forward,
colors
if you
up.
could- I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll see if I can switch those colors up for the next one.
Yeah, and maybe having, one thought would be to have them go left to right in terms of chronology. It might just be easier to read. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Under general discussion, I have, we did put in to replace 2 services. One over on Cedarwood Road, I believe it was. Excuse me, no. Down by Nickerson Road, down the end of Nickerson Road. It might have
Charlotte.
been, what is it? Charlotte Ave. Thank you.
Charlotte.
Yep, corner of Charlotte and there. And we had Katuitt Inn replaced their line coming in because it was rusting, and they really wanted the safety reasons of doing it. John, our newest employee, has passed his D2 exam, which I had mentioned last month that he had passed his T2. He has now passed his D2. He took it and passed it. And he's actually signed up for a class for, it's either his D or T3. It was something he could get free for being a college student and do it on his own time. So he's going to be doing that at home, basically. Learn as you go, basically. We did have the stations calibrated, which we do every January. And just to see how they're doing for our annual statistical report every year. So we can compare to make sure that everything's running okay. We did have one station that seemed to be a little off. I believe it was station 4, might have been off around 5%. So we did have to dial that back in, but we kind of figure it over the year. We can only count it as being 5% in December. Before that, it was 4.7%. Before that, it was 4.5% in October. So each one has to have a decrease as the month goes. Just to let you know, we won't be in on Monday with a holiday. We won't be around. If anybody needs anything, it should be done either after that or before that. And this is more of just something that's coming down. I got approached by a couple gentlemen from the Holy Ghost Society, which is down on Main Street, down towards Route 28. It's a Portuguese American club. They don't have a large membership. It's just like any other clubs that are out there now. It's kind of declining. They have rented out to a church in the past, but the church got too big for the building. So they had to actually go to a different building. So they haven't really had anybody renting it or anything, and they ended up having a toilet leak that went undetected, which they have said will break them if they have to pay the water bill on. Jen and I have discussed it, and the leak rate that we have does not really give them any kind of a break. The only thing they have for a moneymaker right now is they have a feast every year, and they haven't had it in 2 years now because of pandemic. So they really, everything's just dwindling away that they have until they can open up and start doing their feast every year and whatever other fundraisers they have. So they were supposed to try to get a letter to me by today, but he told me that the secretary was actually on vacation, and the treasurer was also. So just be expected that that's going to be coming probably. They're going to ask for some kind of either forgiveness or something to that effect. Kind of just a heads up like they gave you last week on, last month on somebody that was going to be, had a leak also.
Chris, do we know what the rough amount is? How much we're talking here?
I think we're talking around 200,000 gallons of water ended up going through,
And what
running
will be
into
the
the
cost?
septic.
What will be the cost of that roughly?
Jen?
I didn't know you were
200,000?
bringing this up tonight, so. I'm
Oh,
not
sorry.
prepared.
That's okay. We can wait. It's going to come up later. Sorry.
Pick
I was
that up
just trying
next
to get an
month.
idea. Yeah, I was just trying to get an idea how big of a leak, but it sounds like it was pretty big.
I think it was 204,000 gallons. I can figure that out while we talk.
No,
No big
that's
deal.
okay. I mean,
Come back
it
to it.
was
Sorry.
up there quite a bit if I remember right.
Yeah.
Was it a $2,000 bill?
Couple
Something?
grand, yeah.
Yeah, it was a couple grand for it, where usually they don't even go much over the minimum.
So I'm just curious, I mean, if it's not being used hardly at all, why wouldn't they just shut the water down, turn the main off when they're not?
They do now. They actually, and the funniest part is that they stuck a gallon jug and wired it inside the toilet so that they weren't using too much water when they flushed the toilet, and the wire broke and got stuck between the flapper and everything. So it just kept running. So they were trying to actually save water, and this is what happened.
That's part of my theory that no good deed goes unpunished.
Right. And that's all I have tonight for you guys.
Chris, I have a question, Mr. Chair, on this.
Sure.
Not to get into a great detail, but are there any technologies, do we have them, are they available where we can eat more, sooner determine a leak like that? How long do you think that went on for? 200,000 gallons.
That might have gone on for about a month. I mean, because they usually check it. He said he usually checks it every 2 weeks, and something might have happened. He might have went away and somebody didn't get to check it for a month. They have a monthly meeting that they go in there once a month and check it and do the meetings and stuff.
And that's how we found out eventually?
Yeah, and somebody went in to check it on one day just to check it out because he hadn't been there in a little while. And when he walked in, he was walking downstairs, and they only have, I think, 3 bathrooms in the place. And they said when he walked downstairs to check the kitchen, he said he could hear water running.
My question is, are there any easily available, inexpensive technologies to head off this stuff? Or
I don't think there's like that we have.
right.
There are meters out there that can detect them, but you have to read them constantly to do it.
Yeah, I understand.
Have to be on the outflow side, right? Be on the septic system.
You would think something like that, or even like just a moisture sensor, that they'd have to have an alarm system that had a moisture sensor that would call, but I don't even think that would work with a toilet leak.
Right.
The bill would be $1,651.80 currently.
Well, the good news is going back into our aquifer, right?
Well, it's right there on the Santua River too, so it's kind of flushing out that part of the
Right,
system, which is
right.
not a bad thing. Okay, interesting. All right, is that it for the superintendent's report
That's it. That's all I have for you guys.
and water quality as well? So what's up next, Jen?
Just before we jump on from that, the next thing I had in the packet that I was just bringing up was the test well site. I don't know if you want to talk about that from last meeting.
Yeah.
Just sharing my screen. JR remembered after the meeting that we had test wells over behind Mariner Circle, behind the properties that we were talking about last month, that we had in place back when we had the MTBE testing for the gas leak at the gas station there on Route 28. So we do have some existing test wells in that neighborhood that we could draw on if we want to do some sampling for nitrogen testing.
Yeah, though, the CW ones are ones that we had put in. And those, some of them are bent over now. There were pieces that were sticking out of the ground. The other ones are ones that the Citco station put in at the time to, through Prime Engineering, to do some remediation and test as they were going with the remediation they had at the station. And I did check, that is a town road there. Mariner Circle and Warren Drive, they're not private, they are a town road.
Are any of those test wells in close proximity to the Lugene Printing Company property?
I was just looking at that.
It looks like 35 and 94
Yeah.
downstream there.
Yeah, so it might be.
And then this, I believe, is the Lugene property, one of these two.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
I spoke with Michael Lally, the owner of that property, and he wasn't against us putting in a well on the back end of that property. But if we already have some there, maybe we could save some money and not have to put another one in. He'd like to talk about it later on in the spring.
Yeah. So Chairman, I guess this is, first of all, is this JR who came up with this? This is great. Thank you so much that's really, really helpful. Appreciate it. And Jen, I would like to, I'm remembering this report, this study now, just hearing about it. Assuming we have a copy of it somewhere, and if so, I'd love to look at that again, really for the purpose of defining and confirming the groundwater flow directions, which is going to get to a later agenda item. But I'm also was going to suggest, Mr. Chair, that maybe we could provide this information to our consultant, Tom Cambereri, and ask his opinion if he feels this well would be a good place to go. I know he's thought about this a little bit. My sense is it might be pretty good, but not ideal, but I'd defer to him.
It is a
Just
little
one thought.
remote. Yeah.
What's that?
So in this case, they were chasing the MBTE plume, right?
Yeah.
How long ago was that? I mean, that's a long time ago. These wells might need to be renovated anyway. The other thing is they're down gradient from a whole bunch of houses, so you're not really going to be able to tell anything about the stump dump.
Right. That's a good point.
Well,
Yeah,
the stump dump is not really a stump dump. So I did get some history on that as well. If you want
Okay.
to talk about that right now, and that's under our old business, under our source water protection plan report review. So I think it's appropriate at this point. So it was in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s that the property was used as a nursery for plants, right? So a landscape nursery and a landscape operation, and it then has been, and at that point it was permitted by the town of Barnstable. So I'm not quite sure what that means, but it was permitted for them to store chemicals on the site and to have their equipment there and do their equipment maintenance and have so many plants per acre, et cetera, and include some composting, but not commercial composting. And then it's changed hands since then in terms of the leasees. And there was one other landscaper in there, and then now since then there's been just a couple of tree companies, and the tree companies pretty much just bring trunks there, cut them up, and then sell them. So they're not decomposing there at all. And what is there is hardwood. It's heartwood. So it's not sitting and rotting and decomposing much. So that's was his recollection, Michael's recollection of what was going on there over the last, 40 years now. So I found that interesting. And again, he said, we could talk later on in the spring about putting in a test well at the back end of the property there. And at that point, we'd certainly want to talk with a consultant about where to site that well, right? And whether or not any of the existing wells might capture some of the affluent that's coming from that property. But like you say, there's quite a few properties in between, which we're also interested in, right? So I don't know how we want to proceed with that. But I did make contact with him, and he was glad to hear that we were interested in the water there.
Well, yeah, I guess I would suggest, as I inferred earlier, that maybe we could provide this to Tom and have him take a look at it and see if he would, what he thinks of it, whether propose putting the well or whether he thinks not necessary. I don't think this is a high, I appreciate your update, Tom. That's really helpful. And maybe my feeling is it's maybe not as big of a risk as I initially thought when I went to see it. I don't want to be overly alarmed, but at the same time, it does strike me as a site that we should at least keep on our radar. It is directly up gradient. It's had a number of users of the site. And as we all know, we don't know everything that's happened there. Sometimes when you have a site like this, things tend to get or can be disposed of. I'm not suggesting any hazardous materials. It looks like it's mostly landscaping material, but it could be a source of nitrogen, I guess is why we originally started talking about this. So I would put it as a medium priority. And if the other commissioners feel it's worth it, we could have Tom look at it and make us a recommendation.
I'm not sure that we have consulting monies left for that, right? Chris?
Yeah, we could pull something out. If he needs to look at just a little, do a little bit of reviewing and stuff like that. I think we're okay. We're not talking thousands and thousands of dollars here to review something like that. I think we're good.
And there may be, if I may, there's the agenda item coming up that I think Jennifer here is for, that we'll get to maybe soon. This might be related to that. We might be able to kill two birds with one stone here, is what I was going to recommend. So we can talk about that in a few minutes.
It sounds like there's nothing on the site now that would be problematic from what Tom is describing. Seems to me if the stuff was problematic 40 years ago, it's already leached way beyond the property. Unless there's stuff stuck on the soil, but if it's stuck on the soil, then it's not getting into the groundwater. Is that true? Fair?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on when things were disposed of there, and it sounds like we have a fairly good idea of that. But again, I'm taking a step back here, I guess. I'm thinking it's maybe not as big of a threat as initially, but I still think it's worth thinking about. So I don't have a problem deferring this until next budget year, if that's what we're thinking here.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that?
Well, are there results available for those old Citgo wells?
Yeah,
Still around?
I have the actual report that was done with the remediation report and stuff. I don't know for sure if they have all the results in them, but this is where this map came from. So we do have that at the office, and I can make it available.
Was it just the MBTE that they were testing for? Or did they sample for nutrients and sodium and other?
I don't think they tested for
Compounds.
much more than they had to at the time because of the lawsuit that was going on and everything else.
Gotcha. Okay.
Just if we wanted to, can we get into those wells for samples in the future, do you know, or who owns the wells?
I believe well, right now, I think it's probably Katuitt Art Center. They bought the
Okay.
Citgo station, so they might even own, originally, they might have lost it after they sold this gas station. And these are just in the town layout. Actually, some of them are in the road. They
Yeah.
have like curb boxes on them.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
The two that were circled in red, JR noted, are accessible.
Oh,
Oh, that's
good.
great. Good, thanks, JR.
Yeah.
Let's see, he's on here. All right, well, let's keep that on our radar and certainly investigate further, maybe with Katuitt Center for the Arts about accessing those wells if they are in fact responsible for them, but they are on a public way, so I don't know how that works, but we'll look into that. Our
You know,
next,
if they could be easily reopened, it might be interesting to just do sodium, if nothing else.
Right.
Since that neighborhood is right down gradient from Route 28.
Yeah.
Might be interesting to see what kind of levels, and they're affected by septic systems too, but you know, clearly sodium is getting into the main well field, and this this is the major neighborhood that's in between the highway and the well field. So it might, I don't know, it just might be interesting to see if they're as elevated there. I would imagine they would be.
Yeah, I
it's
agree.
well-
It might be
well,
worth
1
doing.
and 2 are probably in fairly, good proximity to those test wells. Right, they're on the higher end of that piece of ground.
I guess they're wells of opportunity if they can be renovated to, you know, who has the key to unlock the cap?
Very poetic.
Yeah, and in terms of renovation, Mark, really probably all you need to do is be pumped off just to kind of clear them, and they're probably good to go. So I think it's a good idea. I mean, the main cost is already there. They've already drilled the wells. So it wouldn't be a big deal, I don't think, to grab some samples out of them for sodium and nitrates for sure.
Well, if we have a little bit of money in this budget, Chris, maybe we want to talk to Tom Camporeri about that.
Yeah, we'll take a peek at it, see what we've got, and I can review everything over a little bit more.
Yeah, see,
And Chris, if
I know
you
you've
can
had
just-
some unexpected expenses, and the cost of
Yep.
everything has gone up so exponentially that it's going to be a tight year. So,
Chris, if you could
Take a
send that
look at that.
report around, that'd be great too. Thanks.
Okay.
all right, the next is our subcommittee updates. Any updates from bylaw, policy, advisory? The school subcommittee has not met, so we'll hear from Commissioner Robinson.
The bylaw committee met last night. It was an endlessly fascinating hour about punctuation, grammar, and
Perfect for you.
I was clearly outclassed with some of the linguistic jujitsu that people were doing on the bylaws.
Wow.
There wasn't anything really of substance other than the fact that we came to the conclusion that we're all violating one of the bylaws about having our reports done at the end of the calendar year. As I understand it, the clerk notifies the committee chairs that they need to get their reports in for the annual report, which is published in the spring, and they're just, we typically don't do that until, this time of year. So we want to address these operational scheduling issues with the clerk and see if we can change the bylaws to make sense of what we actually do. Nobody seems to be submitting reports by the end of the calendar year. Obviously, they need to be done for the annual meeting after the end of the fiscal year, but either we all have to write reports at Christmas time, or we change the bylaws, make it real.
So is that for all the boards? So the water district should have a report in?
All of the commissions, yeah.
Okay.
So, but it's clearly up to the clerk to organize and coordinate the collection of those reports, and it doesn't seem that doesn't seem to have been a very hard deadline many years. So we're going to talk to the clerk, see what he suggests, and then regroup.
Yeah, it seems like it would be like a half-year report that they're looking for, or that he maybe at one point wanted or
And
required from.
there's another thing in there that says that the financials have to be available by the 90 days after the end of the fiscal year, which again is information that's contained in the annual report. Excuse me, but it's just the timing issues in the bylaws don't seem to make sense.
Gotcha.
Which is kind of funny because the clerk called last week and said to make sure Tom's was done by the end of February. And
Right.
Jen had mentioned to you in the past and everything, but he's expecting them by the end of February.
Right, and that's the same with the fire commission.
Yeah.
So, you know, clearly, end of February is not the end of the calendar year.
So just the annual report for our annual report,
Yes,
which we distribute at the district meeting in June.
May.
yes, which goes into the annual report. Yes.
Right. Is due at the end of this month.
Well, the bylaws say they're supposed to be due at the end of December, but they never are.
Okay. We're working on it.
Well, I mean, I think it just makes sense if we're not abiding by that deadline, then let's change the bylaws to make something more reasonable.
Yeah. All right, Jen, so I'll have to get together with you on that maybe next week. Are you around next week?
I am.
Okay.
Except for
I
Monday.
think I sent you the,
Yeah.
except for Monday.
I won't be around. I won't be around till probably Tuesday either, if at the earliest, so.
I think I emailed you previously the past 2 or 3 years letters and
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, if I may. I think we have, we're skipping over, we have the source water protection update or review on the agenda, and I think Jennifer is here for that. Could we
Okay.
drop back and just spend a
Yeah,
couple more minutes on that?
I thought we were into that when we were talking about the test.
Yeah, we did. We started, but there's a couple of other items, if I may. Is this
Yes.
okay?
Back right up.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, I just wanted, with Jennifer here, report to the commissioners that she and I did have a meeting with one of my students who was one of the students who worked last semester. His name is Casey Goodwin, who is taking my spring course currently, and he has selected basically helping us implement part of that plan, specifically the part regarding the septic upgrades, by working with Jennifer and I this semester. So the intent would be, if we get concurrence here that this would be helpful and useful, would be that he would help us really on a couple of items. One would be putting sort of the pitch together for the spring prudential committee meeting in terms of what we're proposing and what it's going to cost and all that. And then secondly, work with Jennifer on an outreach program to homeowners to see if they'd be willing and interested in participating with septic upgrades. And I should actually take a step back because perhaps as importantly, and more importantly, I did speak with Rob Steen from the Barnstable DPW about this because I wanted to make sure that this wouldn't be in conflict with the town's comprehensive wastewater plan, which tentatively does include the potential to sewer this area. And Rob was pretty clear that he said that that was probably on the order of a 30-year plan if it happens. And he supported us moving forward with the septic upgrades for two reasons. One is it will happen a lot sooner. And secondly, it would probably cost a lot less money than a sewering approach. So I just kind of wanted to update with you with that. And maybe I'll ask if Jennifer wants to add anything because I'm forgetting. Might be forgetting a couple things, and then we'll see where we're at.
I wouldn't say you're forgetting anything, but I can say Casey, the student, is very energized and interested and motivated. So our first task would be to use the data and to identify which homes we would target, because that's the most important part in the community engagement part of the aspect. And then raising public awareness and general awareness around the community to understand what we're trying to accomplish and why we've selected the community. So I think last time I attended this meeting, the model is somewhat similar to what we're doing in Marston's Mills with the Shubal Pond IA project.
It's great. So what's our pathway here? What do we need? What do we need from the commission?
Well, I
Scott,
guess
what do you see?
I think just to make sure that this is something that we want to move forward with, we did talk at the last meeting about possibly putting some budgetary items on the longer term plan, capital plan, to recommend that we would provide funding to upgrade some of these septic systems that are within the capture areas that Tom identified. So as long as we're still on board with that, then Casey can do the work, I think, because to put together this, essentially it would be a plan on how to do this, and how many of these systems we want to do during a first phase, and how we reach the homeowners, and how it all gets done. My sense is that if we are going to recommend this, this is going to be an important discussion item at the spring Prudential Committee meeting, because we're talking about a significant budget item. And, wastewater is always a hot item one way or the other. So I think having a well thought out plan as to how to do this would make sense. And Jennifer, who's, I think, wearing her Barnstable Clean Water Coalition hat here, is offering to provide some assistance, because she's been essentially doing, as she said, doing the same thing over at the Hubal's Pond project in Marston's Mills, and that's been going very well. She has developed an excellent dialogue with the neighbors. They're very supportive. It's been a really good community effort. So that's why I was hoping we could get her involved, and I think she's willing to do that, working with Casey. So I think one reason I wanted to get it up tonight's agenda is that Casey's starting on this now, and we'll have the work done in April, 2 months from now. And I just want to make sure this is something that the commissioners, in fact, want to move forward with.
Yeah, and just one other thing to add, and it's part of my learning process here is working with Casey and Scott on a timeline. So if we've got to be prepared to have a presentation with, as Scott said, process and budgetary numbers, what meetings are we going to, and what information do we need to be presenting?
Well, it sounds like it's a ripe opportunity for us here that I think we should try to take advantage of. I did meet with the Prudential Committee and presented our 5-year capital budget to them. And those upgrades were part of that, and I didn't hear any opposition to that proposal. They were kind of focused, which you can well expect, on the $10 to $12 million treatment plant option, which is something that's also on the table, and they're very concerned about. But they're also very aware of the fact that that could be very well be a reality, right? So I think if we could head some of that off with some source water protection planning and not just planning, but implementation of some projects like this, I think it would be well received. That's the feeling I got. Jen, do you remember? Jen Nash, do you remember? Did we have 3 per year in that CIP?
1 second.
It was either 3 or 5, or maybe Mark or Scott. You guys remember when we put that together the last meeting?
I don't remember the number, but I guess that's also one of my questions, whether we'd have, through the process of this plan over the next 60 days, if we'd have some flexibility to maybe change that number. Because I think we want to, frankly, I think we threw some numbers at the wall at the last meeting.
Yeah.
And I think if Casey's going to spend the semester looking at this, my gut feeling is to detect a difference in the well, we need more than 3. So it might make more sense to do a group of something more like, 5 or 10, which is going to get us more into the, $200,000 to $300,000 range of cost. let's see, what do we have here, Jen? Go ahead.
So we put in escalating amounts starting in fiscal year 24. If we had estimated 20,000 per well, we were starting with 5 in fiscal year 24.
Okay, yeah, that's closer to, and I guess we're using the 20 number. That might be Jen, our average number, Jennifer, the average number
Yeah.
over at Schubel's is more like 25, is that right?
Yeah, no, you're gonna need more money.
Okay,
So
Everything's going up.
I would say if I'm looking at that 100,000 figure for fiscal year 24,
yep,
all in costs, you know, engineering, installation, tanks, et cetera. And I'm assuming this is a pretty old neighborhood. I'm gonna say you got 3 to 4 properties there.
yeah. So I guess my question is, there's some
25 to
flex-
30K. So
Yeah,
maybe
Yeah.
in our operating budget for FY 23, we want to have a similar figure or maybe even a little higher.
I think so.
yeah.
I think if we can get the support of the village, the Prudential Committee, I think to have some results, there's probably a critical mass here.
Yeah.
And my guess is it's something like 5 systems. But that's the kind of thing that I think we'd want to talk through with Casey, and we're hoping to get a little Tom's time, just, discussion, think this through and figure out how many. In fact, one of Casey's first tasks is to work on GIS and actually determine how many septics are within that contributing area. We did a quick count of it, but the idea here is to do a more detailed analysis of that and see if we can recommend a number that would make a difference. But
Just,
yeah, something like that makes sense.
yeah, just know that if you've got a healthy Title V right now, you could be like all in at 28,000, 25 to 28,000. If you've got a full replacement, so you got cesspool or you got a very old system, you're more in the 30,000 range.
All right.
But these
So
problems are pretty good.
that subdivision was built in the 70s, but
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. You might have some cesspools and some old systems there.
yeah, but I mean, they would have had to do an upgrade on a point of sale, right?
True.
I doubt there are many people that are still living there from the 1970s, except maybe Gil Newton.
And my former in-laws.
Okay. But I guess that what I'm thinking is the first year or two might be, just a demonstration. And if you get 3 done in a year, it seems to me that that's achievable. I don't think people are going to be pounding on the door to want this done, even if they're not paying for it.
Oh,
It's a big disruption. Yeah.
you'd be surprised, Mark.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
And just, I'd rather be full up front with costs than on the back end. Once you get it installed, you've got the sampling and testing that needs to be done. And that's about $1,000 a year per property.
Yeah, good.
You tell somebody they're getting a free septic system, they feel like they've won the lottery.
Yeah.
Well, is it free or is it just an add-on? I'm not quite sure what's being
Oh,
done here.
Well, if somebody has a cesspool or a very old system, it's going to be recommended that they get a full replacement.
Okay. And then there'll be some special treatment added to it, the extra box or something?
Yeah, yes.
So is that something that we want to propose that the district would pay for into our operating budget for 2023? And then keep it into our 5-year plan out past, 2027 or 28, whatever it goes to.
You talking about the operation maintenance, Tom?
Well, over
Monitoring.
the install,
Oh, for the install. Well, that's what these numbers are here, the 100,000.
right, right.
Yeah,
So
yeah, right.
we're not thinking that we would want to go for grants for that. That would just be water money or tax money.
Well, my thought is that if we can get it in here, it's possible that the town might help us. I mean, this is part of the comprehensive wastewater plan. And if this really would alleviate some of the issues, maybe there's some support from the town at some point. But I thought, at least initially, it might make sense to have it a cost item, but through the district. And then, you're right, there might be some grants as well. In fact, the septic system test center there through the county health is going for a big grant right now to do a bunch of this monitoring and maintenance. And this could be one of the case study areas. So there may be, in fact, some funding in the future, although I think waiting for it may not be the best idea. I think it might be better to, take the lead and then try to supplement.
Who's paying for the installs at Schubel's Pond?
Barnstable Clean Water,
Private organization.
our nonprofit.
Right.
So we had board approval to use Jubal as a demonstration site, working with the EPA and USGA and others. And our board supported a installation of 15.
How much do you have to test afterwards? You were talking about extra testing. How long would it have to go on for?
So I'm sorry, Scott, please.
No, go ahead. That's right.
So it would be quarterly testing.
I was just going to add, this system that we'd probably be using what's so-called the provisional approval level, which triggers the quarterly. We're hoping that within a couple, 3 years, that technology will reach full general approval. And in that case, the testing could go down to once per year. So for a period of time, I think, at least my thought is, quarterly is what we should plan on. And then hopefully 3 or 4 years out, that would go down in an annual test. And in that case, I think the cost could be, $500 or less per year.
Yeah.
For OM&M.
My $1,000 annual is approximately $250 a quarter to get to the 1,000. So to Scott's point, if we get it to one annual OM&M, that means the homeowner is only on the hook for about $250 to $300.
So the homeowners are footing the bill on the testing.
Not at,
Oh,
well,
not at Schubel's, but
not at
here they
Schubel.
would be.
Not
And if this becomes a sewer connection, then they're paying a annual sewer fee on top of, the sewer the physical connection from the house to the town sewer is $3 to $5 to 10 grand per house. And then there's somewhere between a $700 and $1,500 per year sewer charge. Towns are dealing with it differently. So this would be obviously less than that.
And it may take the place of a sewer.
That's
hookup.
what I'm thinking. And I think that was my question to Rob Steen. I didn't want to propose something if in fact the town was
Yeah.
going to be coming in to do this. And he said, no, go ahead. This might be a better way to do this.
How many houses are in that subdivision? I think it's about 100, isn't it?
Well, there are, but again, according to Tom's maps, this is what we're trying to focus on. It looks like it's a subset of those that actually contribute to the wells, according to his modeling. And that's kind of what we're
But
focusing.
if we do 20 or 25, there's still 75 houses that they're going to want to bring the sewer down to at some point.
Well, if they do, they may not need to. If the purpose of the sewer is to protect the wells and more than half of them don't flow to the wells, then, why sewer? I guess is the thought. This is this is an alternative and targeted approach. Instead of sewering the whole neighborhood, which they're thinking could be $5 or $10 million, come in and target, let's say 20 or 30 systems over the long run. And if you do the numbers, it looks like that would be much more cost effective.
So if Jennifer, I think she just schooled me on the popularity of this. And in fact, I'm thinking that, when people do go to sell their house that hasn't been upgraded, the septic hasn't been upgraded, they're going to be forced to do that. And that could, be $20,000-$30,000 off the profit of the sale of the house.
Right.
So maybe that's the incentive for people to want to get this done and have a subsidy. And so maybe, we should be thinking about some kind of a sliding scale where in the first year or two, we pay for 100%, but based on the popularity or waiting list even, maybe in years 3 and 4, we only pay 80%. And, I think that it seems there is a financial benefit to the homeowners here, it seems to me, and that's in the resale value of their property. So I'm not sure that we should be spending district money on 100% after the demonstration period, first couple of years.
I think that's fair.
Mm.
That's actually what we're proposing up in Wellfleet as part of the plan. The town actually voted money at town meeting to give homeowners a subsidy towards this. Hasn't really happened yet. Nobody's taken it because they're still thinking about, do I really need to do this?
But I think that's part of the promotional materials will, did you know that when you go to sell your house, if your system hasn't been recently upgraded, you're going to have at least some renovation, if not a whole replacement.
I
And
think, to your point, Mark, when the homes are identified, and part of the analysis is, how old are these systems? Are they going to be, do they even know, have some of them failed and they've been operating with a failed system? And like I keep saying, cesspools are there. This is a value add for these property owners for sale. And then at some point, our the dream here is, if there's nitrogen reduction, can these homes even be adding extra bedrooms to them?
well, they're very small lots. I'd hate to see that. Don't we still have a 10,000 gallon per day per bedroom rule in this area?
I love the concept. I really do. I'm a little apprehensive at asking taxpayers from a village district to foot the bill. The town of Barnstable ought to be helping with this, and just like Scott, you mentioned, Wellfleet is. And if the village starts down this road, then what's to motivate the town of Barnstable to help us out at all? And that's a concern that I think we need to think about and keep mindful of.
These are all good points, and this actually could be a part of Casey's work to look into all of these variables: the market value to the home, the cost share with the town. There's a new county septic loan program that's developing. So there's a bunch of moving parts here, and this could be exactly his study, and he could present it to us. He'd be willing to come back to our March and/or April meeting, probably have it ready in April with some recommendations for us, which would precede the prudential meeting. So my thought would be, Mr. Chair, would be to keep it in here as an item to be discussed, but we don't know the details yet. And all of these questions we're raising are good questions that could be part of the study and ultimately our recommendation to the Prudential Committee. I think it's probably premature for us to know exactly what we want to recommend. And we may recommend no fees from the district and all for the town, but I think at least now, I think the district taking the lead on this is I'm excited about, because like I say, it's way down the list on the town's plan. They have it in there. We'll get back to you in 30 years. I mean, not to be critical, but there's other priorities, and this is our priority. I think this is the point is this neighborhood is probably a higher priority for us than it is the town. It's probably what it comes down to.
I agree.
That's clear.
And we still have good water quality. I mean, the water quality in our bays is not as good as where we'd like it, but it's certainly better than Stewart's Creek.
Right. Yep. Right.
Um,
I think,
Yeah,
Scott, we're
Go ahead,
not
Mark.
likely to have this report, excuse me. Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
No, go ahead, please. Sorry.
We're not likely to have the report by the time we need it as ammunition to speak with the Prudential Committee. I think that we were wise to put FY '24 instead of '23 for the first capital cost. I don't think, based on the discussion tonight, we're not ready to present a justification to the Prudential Committee and the voters as to why we want $100,000 in that line item.
When would that date be?
I think the report will inform us so that we will have that ammunition. I
When
mean, there's
is
other
that?
things, the selection criteria, how are you going to decide which ones to do first? Is it first come, first serve? Well, obviously you have to be immediately upgrading into the narrow cones that Tom has identified. Is it the type of system that's there? Is it proximity to the well? I mean, so there's a bunch of variables that the report might indicate, how we assign preferences. So lottery, I mean, if it's going to be that popular, we don't want to be accused of not making rational selections.
Yeah. I just want to go back to your comment on the timing. When do we need to be ready for which meeting? The Prudential?
The spring budget meeting, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I mean,
Come on.
they would want articles. This would be an article. And when do they like those? Chris, Jen?
I believe it's March.
March?
I think so. I know they have to publish
Mid-March.
them. I believe it's 30 days before the meeting. The annual district meeting would be, I think the 24th of May, if I had to guess. I think it's the fourth Tuesday.
So we
And
could
then
either
select
put it in
candidates
now
for
and then
usually mid-May.
withdraw it if we're not feeling ready and able to make a convincing argument for it, or just defer it until the report is done for us. I could go either way on that, but I wouldn't want to have to send my poor chairman up to argue for something that we haven't fully baked.
I agree with that. And I don't know, it is a tight time frame for sure. On the other side, in that we have one bite at the apple per year, the apple kind of gets soft and rotten if we wait a year.
Well, it took us 3 years to do an irrigation policy that came out well.
Point. Well, I think regardless of whether or not we put something into our fiscal year 23 budget, I think we want Casey and with the help of Jen, if she's willing to help, to move forward on a kind of a study plan.
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
or an installation plan or a project plan. I don't know what you'd call it, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Because that, I think, is that going to cost us anything?
I don't think so.
Right. So we don't want that to go away. And maybe we have to have a special meeting. And
Yeah,
that's
okay.
something we could do as well. And we also have stabilization account funds, which could potentially be used for this, because this is source water protection. This is water department money, and that's why we have that fund. Right? So
Okay, I'm comfortable with that.
does that sound like a path forward?
Yeah, I think that's really what we're asking for, Tom, is, do we want to do the study? Is it worth doing? Is the commissioners interested in this? I wouldn't want him spending all his time and Jennifer if we
Yeah.
felt this is a non-starter.
No, to me, it sounds like a great opportunity for us. I don't know if Commissioner, I get a feeling that everybody else feels the same way, but if not,
Yeah.
or so, please chime in.
Yeah, I think it's just my only hesitation is the timing and trying to rush the judgment on it. That's all.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. I don't think we need a vote or anything. I think, Jennifer, unless you have any other questions, I think we're good here.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, then.
Yes. Yep.
Anything else source
No,
wise?
I think that's the only thing I had tonight, Mr.
That's
Chairman.
great. That's good. Thank you for putting that together.
Welcome.
I think it's kind of a nice feather for the commission again.
And this is really, really innovative stuff, and I really appreciate having expertise like we have. The two science brains here on the commission. I think it's great.
Now, the district is very fortunate for all of your work, everyone's work. Thank you. All right, so anything on the policy advisory committee? And nothing on the school subcommittee. I did meet with the Prudential Committee and presented, like I just said a few minutes ago, the 5-year capital improvement plan. And there was some good discussion around that, but no action taken, just like it's there. And I suppose we'll present it to the district at district meeting. And perhaps that'll be the responsibility of each of the commissions, I would think. So we'll look forward to that. And that brings us to our operating and maintenance budget, which we still have some pretty big holes in, which I was hoping we could fill tonight. And Jen's put together a nice spreadsheet for us on that. And I guess she's going to share that. So I get at this point, I don't think we'd add anything for septic systems for FY23. We'll just move forward with the study, for the project study, to see about its feasibility and options. And then if we need to go to a special district meeting, we'd make those steps at that point. Is that what I'm hearing from the commissioners?
That's fine.
You know, a lot of these things level funded. I assume that's because we don't expect to be overspending it in the last year or so. It's based on some history, but it really is true that every time I go in any store, the things that I buy regularly, it's not just groceries, it's lots of different things. You know, it's $2 more on a $20 item. I mean, it's crazy what's going on right now. I just wonder if we should give ourselves a little more leeway on some of these and put like at least a 5% increase on some of them. Like, so, I mean, do we come close to 10,000 for gasoline?
So let's see if I have that with me right now. Hold on. I know that I wanted to bring up tonight between gasoline and stations and tanks. I'd like to increase a little bit. Right now, last month, I know we had a lot of snow plowing. We probably did 7 to 10 to 12 hours worth of plowing between the last bill. But our bill was over $1,000 this month for fuel. If that increases, I think we'll be out of money. We'll be right at the 10,000. There you go. Yeah. So we have 7,000. Yeah, we've been averaging around $575 a month now. I don't see the price going down, especially with what's going on in Europe right now too. If anything happens, it's going to be going up even more.
I think you need to put at least a 10% on that one, maybe more. I'd hate to.
I think you're correct. I think if we knocked it up another, 1,000 just to be safe, or even 1,500.
Yeah, I'll do 1,500.
And the other thing with stations and tanks that was up there, I had mentioned this actually to Tom when I was talking to him today. I kind of only put a couple $1,000 extra because I knew I had to buy a pump coming up. And I was waiting on the price of the pump, and I said, well, I can probably put it in the budget. Well, the price I got for it was $9,000, which I was anticipating around $6,000 for it, maybe between $5,000 and $6,000. I didn't realize it was going to be that much. I need to increase that up another, I think it was 42. I'd like to put another 5 grand in that at least, just to make sure I can get this pump. We did actually make a pump from all the old pumps that we had together. The guys get together and it took them about a month, but we did get one together to work, and we do have everything working again. We put it off until we got the price, and they stopped making the pump that we used to have. So this is the alternative to it now, and we have to pay 9 grand to get one to work for it. So I can investigate a little more, but I'd like to increase that also, just in case with the price of everything going up, that even goes up.
Yeah. Well, makes sense. Everything's going up.
Correct.
What
I
about
mean,
chemicals? Do you see increases in chemicals? I mean, the delivery costs on those things are usually what the bulk of the bills are.
yeah, half the time. I mean, everything's going up. We did go up a couple $1,000. I believe we did put chemicals on there, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, just because we figured fuel delivery costs were going to be up so much more this year. Sometimes we drive and get it ourselves when we really need it bad. We only have to go to Fairhaven to pick up chlorine. And they're just in carboys, little 5-gallon jugs. So we will go pick them up sometimes if we have to. But I mean, everything's
I
going up.
don't love that.
I don't know
So
about
I have-
postage anymore.
Mr. Chairman, I have one generic comment here.
Yes.
First of all, I agree wholeheartedly that we ought to probably have an across the board, I don't want to call it a cost of living increase, but a cost of life increase
Yeah.
for running the business. However, the one thing that's missing from this chart, and Jen, this is not a criticism at all, but is how much we spent of last year's budget. So I'm wondering if some of these items as we go, we didn't need that much money. And I'm just wondering whether we do that individually, or I suspect, Jen, you have a pretty good fix on that. But I guess what I'm getting at is I almost might suggest, again, across the board increase, except for those items where we feel last year's budget maybe was more than we needed, if that's possible.
Makes sense.
So I actually have our spending to date through February, through this last warrant that you just signed. Unfortunately, I don't have it electronically to share.
Well, maybe if you just look at it as we go here, Jen, and give us
Yeah.
an idea if there are some things that we over budgeted for last year. I think that's just part of our fiscal responsibility here.
Yeah. So of the things that we just talked about with stations and tanks, we only have $4,400 left in that account for this year.
Yeah. So that one's pretty good. Yeah.
Yep.
I guess maybe
Water-
if you could just flag things that look like we had some surplus, so we
Yeah.
can be aware of those.
So far under water testing, we've only spent 4,300 out of the 15,000 that we've budgeted to date. But Chris, I imagine you have some hefty things coming up this spring.
Yeah, we're gonna have MTB. We're waiting on those bills right now. Excuse me, PFAS. We're
Yep.
waiting on right now.
Right.
And we do have another SOCs that have to be done, which are around $900.
I was just gonna say.
And it's not gonna take the entire amount right now, but it's gonna get up there. There's a few things on this list that I have specifically not spent a lot of money on to kind of absorb the overages that we have in other spots. If I needed to, if there was a reason to do it, if I would do it and overspend. I'm just trying not to right now. If I was down to zero, instead of buying a dozen things now, I'm buying half a dozen things, things to just get us by to the new year.
We're 14,000, almost $15,000 over budget in water mains right now.
Correct.
We have not spent anything out of meter replacement yet, but we typically do.
Correct. And we did take some of that meter money and take it, use it took it out of a different account.
Yeah, I think these two right now are going to absorb our overage in water mains.
Correct. We're hoping.
We hope.
Because
Well,
right now,
Should we increase the water main one? I mean, should we get it more on target here? So let's do that next year. Is there You think we need more on the water main?
We increased it about $5,000 just because we had some very high prices on paving. And we've had quite a few different leaks this year that were a lot harder to repair, we'll say. There were water main breaks instead of water line breaks that we usually have. So it takes a lot more time. There's a lot more water involved and stuff like that. So that increase that's there is because of some of the stuff that we had to throughout the year. Like I think one paving bill we had was almost $9,000 because it was such a large area that we had to pave.
Yeah.
So normally we wouldn't have to pay that much. Normally it would be $1,000 to do, but on a leak. But this one was at an intersection that took up the entire intersection.
And I don't know how we don't plan for that. That could very well happen again next year, right? With the aging system that we have. I mean, I'm looking at the data that I shared with the Prudential Committee last month, and we, like you said, we were $14,000 over our water main budget. And so I don't know if $5,000 is going to be enough of an addition there.
So how does our stabilization fund work for something like that? I mean, that's a real capital improvement, isn't it?
So yeah, the stabilization fund is for capital improvements. It's for the
Yes.
water system. It could be for water mains, for emergency. It's a rainy day fund, but it requires a district meeting. So
There is a general stabilization fund for the district that the Prudential Committee can vote to spend funds on. That gets funded every year at the annual meeting.
how much is in that, Jen?
I will, while we talk, I'll see if I can find the last expenditure report from the district on our website.
I just wonder if that's not something that we've taken advantage of in the past, but I'm sure we have, just with Ray moving money around, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I think he
correct.
moved some money out of there for
Yeah.
overtime last year that we didn't end up needing.
Yeah.
Budget report. So the December 31st budget report is the last one out there. And let's see.
I think while Jen's looking at that, I like your idea of kind of just taking a line by line review of all of these items and seeing if we want to shore things up a little bit prior to the March presentation of the budget. And if we need to, if we can decrease anywhere, that certainly would be.
Yeah, my suggestion would be, I think I would agree with you, Brian.
They transferred 35,000 in.
Yeah. So it's 35 grand in there now.
Yeah.
Well,
That's actually politically, that's a good idea, because that may make the board feel like, well, maybe we can't do that, but we cannot.
Scott's on a call or something, I guess. Okay. All right. So just let's keep that budget kind of flexible here, a little plastic, and start looking at lines where we can decrease and make sure that we've got enough money where we've had some high prices and where we can anticipate inflation hitting us pretty hard again next year. Because it's going up pretty high. It's going up.
In the interest of time, Mr. Chair, should we be working on the top of this? We're looking at the salaries.
Yes.
We can
That's what
come
I'd-
back to the smaller items.
So let's go ahead and do that. Let's move up to the salaries. So we've
I
got
think maybe you could ask Chris to the recommendations for his employees first or something.
and that, yeah, so looking at the FY22 figures that are there. What are you thinking along those lines? I shared a document with Chris earlier. Well, not not earlier enough, I'm sure, because
Yeah, no,
I
I
just
didn't,
threw
yeah,
this
I didn't
morning,
write-
I think, but just with some thoughts, just some scribbles from the chair seat as to what we should do. And so now I'd love to hear his.
I will tell you that everybody had a high evaluation, almost perfect on everybody.
Yeah.
Within the exceeding of everybody in this department. I would definitely, I always say cost of living this year is ridiculous, but it is cost of living. In the past, we've always got that. I don't think we need to go a person by person basis now with anything. I don't think we need the intern in there anymore. That was basically for a couple things, and Scott got that for us done for nothing. Basically through the tough students.
You guys don't have to pay me for that, by the way.
So it's always been kind of, your choice here, what you want to give, but yeah, everybody, when we go to look at the step increases, I'd like to change from figures to percentages if we can, just so we don't have to keep having to revisit this every couple of years, because we seem to be getting over what we have for figures in there originally. But here, I have no problem with anybody getting a raise in there, and whatever you guys put in there, it's up to you guys. I think that the cost of living is fine.
Can you explain the steps for the 3 employees? When do they meet the steps?
I think they've all exceeded the steps at this point, except for Matt, who's going to be exceeding the steps that we have in place sometime this spring.
Yes, this is, I think, yeah, he comes in June or something like that, I believe. Into May.
Yeah,
Mr.
and
Chairman,
John's new, so he's in the step ranges that we had originally.
And he's and he's going to be undoing it right now. The level stuff, I think we have it also in the packet. There are some requirements there.
You want me to
Chairman, I have
share
a-
those, Chris?
What's that?
Do you want me to share those on the screen, or you want to leave?
If
budget?
that's what they want to see right now, I could show you the system operator level and the office manager levels up to there.
Chairman, I have I guess a question that relates to some of these positions, and as we move forward here, I'm thinking it's been a year or two now since we went with this new structure of not having an assistant superintendent. And I'm just thinking it might be good time to just check in with Chris again, just to make, are we pretty comfortable continuing on this basis, or is this something that might change over the next year? And does that affect what we're doing right now, I guess is my question.
I've thought about it. I believe both of the guys are really stepped up and doing a very high quality. As I said, one of the things is saving me $9,000 to buy a pump. One of the guys has sat down and with the new operator and took it together and rebuilt a couple pumps for us and got everything going again and saved the district right now $9,000. One of the other, all the sodium testing that you got going on there, you can almost put on one of their backs. He's been doing a lot of it. He's going around doing a lot of the sodium testing. Not that the other one isn't either. That it's. I don't know if I want to make that choice just correct right now. I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
I'd appreciate a little more time, I guess.
Fair enough.
It's working right now. I'd like to keep it that way for a little bit and see what happens.
I guess by a little more time, then you're talking about next fiscal year's budget,
Correct.
so because
I mean, if you
this
want to
thing
time
out.
limit, we can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're comfortable with going with the operators. If you were to win the lottery tomorrow and decide not to join the crew for a few months or the rest of your life,
They could run.
they could run it. So,
Yes.
so there's a succession plan in place, so to
As
speak.
long as Jen doesn't win the lottery, we're okay.
If Jen wins the lottery, we're in trouble.
I'll volunteer my time.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we will. Okay. All right. Does that answer your question, Scott?
It does. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I think what I was suggesting is that I think it's the responsibility of Chris to be recommending any kind of increases, whether they're percentages or flat amounts or cost of living adjustments for the people under him. So I think that I would rather have him propose those, and then we would evaluate it and make sure that it looks good. And then obviously we'll talk about his position. That's the way we do it in my organization. So.
Well, what I heard him say is he'd like to go with a % increase for everybody that addresses the cost of living increases. And I think the COLA is a 5.9%. Somebody want to do a quick check on that? Or do you want to go with my check from a month or so ago? I just did a quick look, and I looked it up, and it looked like Social Security Administration and retirement accounts were going with 5.9% increases for cost of living.
I think the last few years we've been using something more closer to 3, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then did we in fact go with, when we were still within the step structure, was that the cost of living plus the step if they met those guidelines, Chris? I
Yes,
believe it was.
yes. The cost of living was a yearly thing. If they hit the step, they got another increase up to the level that was written down.
And the steps all were established at about 3%.
Correct. One
So
step
if you
over the
want to
other.
go with a percentage increase, you're looking at like an 8.9% with cost of living and steps, given that they've all made progress in their professions and should have a step increase. And we're asking them to take on more responsibilities.
I don't know if I'm following you there. I right now, I was suggesting the cost of living right now, which, as you said, you believe it's 5.9. I'd have to check on that.
I
don't
just
know.
checked it. It's 5.9,
Okay.
2022.
That's always been the norm with us. And I apologize that I don't have a better figure for you or anything like that. It's always in the past been that you guys have looked it up and made your suggestions to us as to what you wanted to give. If you want me to sit down and try to do some figures, I can, but I'd have to email them around instead of right now being thrown on the spot with a figure right now. I see Jen is putting some.
I think she's just done it for us.
Yeah.
So this is the current salaries, other than we need to talk about what's going on here because of the step increases. So JR hit his the last step 5 in January, being that he had 7 years experience. So he was due for an increase in January that I think Chris was going to discuss with you. If he gets that increase, it would bring him to 62,000. Then calculating the 5.9% COLA on top of that, this would be the projected increase for this current salary. But I think there's some things that Chris needs to discuss with you about the steps for these 2 employees.
Correct. They both have will be right now. If we give a raise to Matt and we go in to give him the step increase to 62,000, Matt will be making probably 62.5 or 63 at that point, and that step increase will not affect him at all, which is not what they originally put out there to do. That's why we were talking about reapproaching them. The step will not help him at all, put it that way.
So the step would be a 62, and then we'd add 5.9 onto that.
Well, he doesn't reach the step though until June of this year.
July,
That's-
after the
July.
beginning of the fiscal year,
Yeah,
like 3
So-
days, 4 days after the beginning of the fiscal
Yeah.
year.
And what we did in the past was we made that retro to the fiscal year, right? So what we did, or to his anniversary date is what we did. When
correct. We'd have to,
Or maybe it was to JR. You know, one of them. I
JR, we would
remember.
have to make it, yeah, make retro back when we put him to his increase or his step increase.
So right now, both of them should be at a step 5 with 7 years experience.
So
Uh,
Matt would hit that on July 5th. You
Right.
you can call it July 1st and give him a step increase and then his COLA increase, and that would make them the same.
Yeah. And
For budgeting purposes, I think we should do that. Does that make sense, Chris?
yes, it does. Because he will be, 4 days into the year making that.
so what's that bump them to 65.7?
Correct.
What do you think of that, Chris?
Yeah, he will get the COLA on that. He'll have the same wage at that point, yes.
And then I think we do the same with Jen. But she's already beyond her steps as well.
I
And
believe,
we're asking-
yeah.
Go ahead.
Jen's step stopped at 4 years. I believe. Hold on.
Looking at them, yeah, you're right, at 58 grand, but her current salary is 63.9, right?
Correct.
And a 5.9 would bump her up to 67,770.
Correct.
So those are just cost of living increases. At the same time, we're asking these people to do more work. They're wearing masks out there that are full of PFAS, and then they have to do PFAS testing. They're going to be learning GIS. They're working with Vedas and SCADAs and all sorts of software I don't even know how to pronounce.
Well, yeah, I mean, no, I'm not trying to say anything, but, Jen's been running these Zoom meetings now for a couple of years, which she never
Yeah.
really had to do. She's also, helping out quite a bit with this integration with Vadar and taking in meetings and communicating with the treasurer back and forth, which, is part of her job. She's having to do it a lot more than she used to. There's a lot of things that are going on, and we're trying to facilitate some of the requests by the district of trying to get things a little better so that everybody can save a little bit of money in the long run. So, yeah, I mean, we are asking a lot more of people, and I'm not, as I've said before, I'm not looking to say, hey, seniority, you should get something, but, I don't think forever you should be given step increases. I think there ought to be an end point. I just think 4 years is a little short to stop someone and say, okay, now you'll get the, cost of living for the rest of your career here.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
Mr. Chairman, I would just add, when I first started, I'm still the junior guy here as Water Commissioner. My recollection is Jen was not coming to all the meetings or wasn't required to, whatever. And I think having her here is really valuable, and it's more time. I also want to recognize that Matt and JR have been attending pretty regularly here. They're here tonight. And I think, there should be some compensation for that extra time, because I think it's good to have them here. I think it's a good dialogue. So I'm supportive of, some compensation for that extra level of effort that Chris is talking about. And I think Jen clearly deserves it, in my opinion, but I also think, I really appreciate JR and Matt being here as well.
that's not putting anything bad on the new guy either. I'm telling you, he's a go-getter.
I concur, and he should have the step increase as well as the 5.9.
Yeah, it's coming up. Yeah.
Right? Because when's his anniversary date?
April.
That's right around the corner. So we've got him in at John at 46,332. With the steps that we did 5 years ago, he bumps up to what?
So level 2, the definitions of level 2 is that you have to have 2 years experience, which he won't have. He'll only have 1. But at level 2, he is, I was just looking at his calculation here. He will exceed the level 2 dollar amount as written a few years ago with this COLA increase, but wouldn't qualify for it because of his number of years of experience.
It's
So,
only been here, yeah. Okay.
right. So that's why we're saying there's a mismatch in these, the step levels.
The steps need to be adjusted.
Yeah.
The only one that's going to affect right now, unless we add step 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 through 20, because you all will be around for another 20 years.
Nobody sticks around that long.
I'm retiring this year, and I've been doing what I've
Nice.
longer than 20 years. So, yeah. All right. Well,
So I think you're talking about 3 different things between step increases,
Yeah.
COLA increases, and merit increases, which are solely at your discretion.
good point. And there's no merits in here right now.
Right now, no.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very difficult when you're working with public monies in a public setting to be cherry picking merits. I mean, that's what I was saying is I would rely on Chris to make those recommendations for the people working under him, as opposed to us just, spitballing it. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I appreciate all the good work that everybody's been doing too. And, these kind of jobs, like a lot of us, we're expected to do professional development. We've talked about that before, and that's typically on our own time because we want to advance our knowledge in the field. And, it's that's different than, taking on extra work because it's been assigned to you. So just things to think about. It sounds like we're not going to get recommendations on merit tonight, so I think we should just go forward with this. I mean, it could very well be that the cost of living next year will be 8%. So people are going to be getting raises, that's for sure.
Well, and that just covers the cost of living increases. So Chris, I'd like you to give it some thought. And, maybe for our next meeting, which we should have prior to the Prudential meeting in March, come up with a percentage increase for merit. And it sounds to me like all of your employees should receive that.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not passing responsibility. I just, in my little organization, and Scott's run a much bigger one, I mean, it's incumbent on the manager to do these kind of recommendations for the staff, and then the manager himself is evaluated by the board. So I think that's what I'm asking for.
I'll put something together.
Commissioners, what do we think about Chris's salary? We got the 5.9 there. Obviously, I should be incumbent upon us, I think, to.
How many years have you had, Chris? 22?
It'll be, let's see, I started in 1987. So
35?
this year will be, yeah. November.
I've been in my job since 1986. What do I get?
Wow. I didn't think anybody had me.
So clearly, this is your 35th year, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that's a longevity bonus, and it seems to me that, the institutional knowledge that somebody has worked for 35 years and hasn't gone senile yet is an important asset to the operation. And
What are you saying about me?
We're talking about assets, Scott, assets. So, I mean, I think that in terms of a 35-year commitment to an operation like this, which is in the public health field and public safety field, is a very important responsibility. And I would spitball a $10,000 raise on top of these other things. I think that's an amazing accomplishment. So that's for discussion.
I would second that. I had similar thoughts when we did Chris's review last time around. I think he met or exceeded all of the categories. So from sort of a, analytical standpoint, he met everything and exceeded everything. But I do think, the longevity thing, the time period, everything you just said, I agree with. And I think $10,000 is a good number. And I assume you're talking about that in addition to the COLA raise,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson.
Yes.
Yeah, so I would second that. I think that's a nice round number. I think it's a good one, and I think it's appropriate. My sense is this is a well-oiled machine, and Chris deserves a lot of credit for that.
So that's like an additional 9%, 9.2 almost percent. If you want to think of in terms of percents, which I think that's what we're asking Chris to do for his employees as well. Think of it in terms of percents. So like longevity, merit, call it what you want. And I like the idea as well. So having it up, was there a motion and a second?
Well, I'm not suggesting that we're setting a percentage. I'm saying that this is a longevity bonus that's different than a merit bonus. But a longevity bonus is not for people who haven't been here a long time, obviously.
Right on. Yeah. All right.
So, but I think that's, there is merit and there is longevity and there's COLA. I mean, these are all perfectly legitimate reasons to be increasing budgets. And we have two main assets. One is the infrastructure and the other are the people. And you have to invest in people too.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. Recently, as I've been thinking about this the last few days, I've been looking at some of the other districts, the surrounding districts, and that was always one thing that we wanted to make sure that we kept pace with, so that we don't train people to go somewhere else. And and particularly the people that we trained, because they're outstanding. And so I just want to make sure, Chris, when you think about merit increases for your employees, that you give that some serious consideration, because these people, we want to keep them. And we want them to be comfortable living on Cape Cod and
Right.
working in Katuitt for the district.
Sorry, I'm writing while I'm doing that. I appreciate that, guys, too, by the way.
We're gonna be losing Commissioner Horsley if we haven't already.
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I just had to move to my kitchen facility. I'm making a little pasta before my meeting, but I'm listening.
Okay. Well, can we get those percentages and have another, should we set another meeting, I guess? Where are we on our agenda here?
The only other thing on there under new business is, Scott, you would ask me to add the Cape Cod Landscapers Association. You wanted to do a brief update from that meeting.
Yeah, I can do that like in 2 minutes. I just wanted to let the commissioners know that I was asked by, and I don't remember the gentleman's name, but a representative of the annual Cape Cod Landscapers Association to make a brief presentation, which was 15 minutes, on our irrigation policy and specifically the fertigation wells. So I did that, and there seemed to be a fair amount of interest. Seemed like it was pretty well attended. I don't get an actual head count, but put the word out there, and so I think we've got a little bit of notoriety for it, and the other people on the panel seem to be supportive and like the idea. So I just wanted to report that to you guys, so you know that it happened, and I don't know if there's any further action on that, but I think we've got some support within the landscaping industry for what we're doing.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, you want to look at calendars?
yeah, I'm gonna be away the February 28th to the March 10th. For the
I'm
first
not sure
time in a long time.
when Prudential's going to want our budget, but we need to, take a closer look or another close look at it with respect to where we might be able to decrease it as well as where we're going to need to increase it in order to address cost of living, and then also finalize the salary proposals for all employees except Superintendent Wiseman.
And Chris, do you need anything from the board for JR's step increase retroactive to his anniversary date? Or is that,
We should get a vote to give the raise for it. I believe because he's hit it, that we don't need to vote on it. I think we can actually just give him his step increase up to that point right now.
and it was budgeted for?
Right. So we can put in something retroactive on it.
Great, so it was budgeted for, we do not need a vote on that? Be happy
Correct.
to.
It was into there. We already budgeted for him to hit that step increase.
Okay. Perfect.
I'm sorry, I missed when Mark said I was trying to get it up on my phone. When did he say he couldn't make the next meeting? What meeting was
Oh,
it?
I'm sorry, February 28th to the March 10th will be gone.
Okay, so the next meeting would usually be on the 16th again?
The 16th?
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that that's prior to when Prudential wants our budget presented.
They would normally meet the 28th.
Okay, and that's when they're gonna want our annual, our report, or, right?
They're gonna
Correct.
want your annual report at the end of February. Charlie wants that at the end of February.
If you want to meet next week for, a half hour, I'm happy to do that.
Do we need to meet before we send that report over to Charlie?
No, that's just a letter from you.
That's just, yeah. Okay.
Or, just you guys can meet when I'm gone. You got two. So
Why we do it on the 16th unless Scott's,
Well, that's
Right.
good. That's okay with me.
does that work for everyone else?
Yeah.
Jen, Chris? You guys
Yep.
good?
Yes,
Good for me.
Okay. And that's another Zoom, 5:30.
Another Zoom.
Zoom, Zoom. Any other business? Anybody have any comments? Natalie, JR, Matt? Anybody have anything to share? Mark, Scott, Chris, Jen?
So, thank you.
All
I'd
good.
like to thank everybody, by the way, too, again. I appreciate it.
Well, we'd like to thank you for your work.
You already have, you have.
Why we're here.
Thank you.
I think that was a good move. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
all.
Thanks.
Jen, I'll
everyone.
be in next week on Tuesday. I don't.
Yep.
Is that okay?
Yep, I'll be there.
I'll look at the annual report Tuesday morning, or the annual letter, and also, did I come in and sign Chris's employee?
Evaluation, I believe you did.
Did I? I think I did.
No, you took that back with you because you had some additional comments on that. You were gonna look at your notes on that.
Okay. I better do that.
So, yep, we'll do minutes and his final eval copy. Yeah, on Tuesday.
That's okay. Great. Thank you.
Sounds good. Have a good night.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.